Give them a few seconds.
I think the only natural disaster I've managed to avoid is a volcano eruption. I wasn't here when Mount St. Helens went.
Great. The second one sent out more ash our way, though. Second explosion.
Yeah.
All right. So looks like we're probably ready. And
Yes.
today is June 26th. That's our afternoon policy session. And Gary, what's up?
Yes, first, all commissioners are present. Thank you. First, we have Transportation and Development. If Brenda will please bring in that team. This is Metro Transportation Investment Measure, Get Moving 2020, Update and Introduction of Letter of Commitment and Memorandum of Understanding.
Somebody's using Dan Johnson's camera.
Hey, no hat today.
Dan Johnson, the director. Dan, go ahead.
Great, thank you so much.
Excuse me, but we need to correct the record. It's not the 26th, it's the 16th. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
What did I say, the 26th?
Yes, sir.
You're just counting the days, buddy. I can tell.
Good afternoon, everyone. Dan Johnson, Director of Clackamas County's Department of Transportation Development. I have the pleasure of being joined today with Mike Besner, Assistant Director for DTD, and Jamie Stastny, Policy Coordinator with the Department of Transportation and Development. We are here to just basically provide an opportunity to review and comment on two documents Metro is requesting as a part of the Get Moving 2020 effort. With that, I'm going to pass it on to Mike and to Jamie to do a little deeper dive into what those documents look like and discuss any comments you might have. Mike?
Thank you, Dan. Good afternoon, everybody. So we're here to talk about as Dan mentioned, the Get Moving 2020 potential transportation measure that the Metro Council is talking about referring to the November ballot. I do want to start with one thing. In the materials we put forth, we put some things in here for your comments, and we've already scheduled a session 2 weeks from now to come back and discuss it further. In our materials, we were recommending that you approve the drafts as written. When we did this, we were expecting to get a few more final drafts back from Metro. So we're not going to ask right now for final approvals, but we would like to get feedback so that we can work with Metro over the next couple of weeks. And as we get their finalized, they're working on something they're calling an expenditure plan and final project description sheets and final MOUs, and we'll just keep negotiating with them. But we definitely want your feedback here today. We have been fighting very hard for you in the county over, gosh, what is it, like 15 months now going through this process. So that if this measure passes, we want to make sure that Clackamas County gets its fair share. And Jamie especially is putting in tons of incredible hard work on this. To date, where it stands, and none of this is final till we get final documents, if you talk about the corridors that have been selected and the money that they're talking about giving to each of the corridors, and Clackamas County's getting about 20.5-ish, 20.6%. And that is if you take 10% of the Southwest Corridor Light Rail project and put that in Clackamas County, which is the projected ridership from Clackamas County. And if there's lots of different ways that have been hanging out there on how to calculate shares. You're going to hear anything up to as much as 29% to Clackamas County, depending on who you listen to. We don't think it's 29%, but one other number that you might hear is if the Southwest Corridor is simply called a regional project that is taken off the top, Clackamas County gets about 24.5% of whatever's left over after Southwest Corridor. So that's what we've been fighting for. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jamie, and she's going to do a presentation on where we're at.
Good afternoon, commissioners, everybody, Chair Bernard and Administrator Schmidt. It's great to see you all live from my kitchen table. Happy to be here presenting to you all about Get Moving 2020. It's been quite some time since we've been in front of you to share what we've been up to. There's been a lot of work going on with this measure, including the rebranding of this measure from T2020 to Get Moving 2020. And Chair Bernard's been very engaged with the task force in this process and has shown a lot of great leadership. Really appreciate all the work and time put in there. This group met a lot. And since we were last in front of you all, the task force made a unanimous recommendation to include funding for many of the corridors in Clackamas County, and was pretty astounding on specifically the Sunrise Corridor. That corridor had been one that had been in flux, I would say at times in jeopardy of being completely sliced out of the measure. We were really excited and pleased to see the group unanimously recommend funding at a level of 180 million for that project in December. So that's happened since last we were in front of you. In January, the Metro Council gave some feedback to Metro staff on the projects that would be included in the measure. And since then, the task force continued meeting, excuse me, to give feedback on the programs portion of the measure, oversight and accountability of the measure, and also some feedback on the funding mechanisms that will be used to fund the measure. And then they held their last meeting, a celebration. I believe there were 18 meetings or maybe more, probably more than that over the course of a year and a half. So it was a big commitment from the task force. Since April, the Metro counselors have been working really hard with their staff, and everyone has been working hard, but the Metro Council and the Metro staff are really digging in deeply to figure out how to pull all of this together. So I will say really appreciate all their hard work and effort, and their efforts toward inclusivity with talking with all of our staff at the different agencies and getting feedback on how they're putting these things together. Everything's changing by the moment. It's moving very quickly, but they've been really intentional about including that feedback. So I wanted to thank them for that. Metro Council has given feedback on the programs. They will have more formal feedback on the programs, the funding mechanisms, and the oversight and accountability for the measure as well in coming weeks. So the staff recommendation, and currently where we sit, as Mike kind of spoke about a moment ago, is that investments totaling about $780 million are currently proposed for Clackamas County. And I want to call out that in the original presentation that is posted on the website, that number was wrong. So I want to call that out and own that up front, and I'll be sending the corrected version to staff after this presentation. Those investments are mostly in the 4 corridors: McLaughlin, 82nd, Highway 212, Sunrise, C2C. And also, there's a recommendation to include investments on Highway 43 in West Lynn. And I spoke a little bit already about Sunrise, or what we're calling now the Highway 212 Complete Streets and Local Connections Project. This obviously is probably difficult to read on your screens, but I wanted to let you know that we have done a tremendous amount of work to make this project fit within the desired outcomes of the Get Moving 2020 task force and the intentions behind this measure. It took a huge effort by many staff members from our county, but also from ODOT, from Metro, from around the region to make this work as part of this measure. So I wanted to share that with you, and be sure to include our latest version in the presentation. So what's next? As I mentioned before, Metro counselors are doing package refinements and working toward pulling their recommendation together, the staff mostly bringing the recommendation together to present to the Metro Council. We will be back in front of you on the 30th to look for formal feedback on moving forward with the MOUs and the letter of commitment that we're presenting to you today. And then in the first week of July, Metro Council is going to have some listening sessions to get feedback from the public on a possible referral, and they have a target referral date set for July 16th. This is changed and was delayed because of the COVID crisis. So this is a little bit different than what you have seen before, but not unexpected. So today, what we are coming to you with are the letter of commitment, which is a draft letter of commitment, a non-binding agreement. All of these agreements are non-binding, to show that we will upon passage of the measure, commit to be good partners and support implementation of these investments in our county. We have a letter of commitment that covers all the projects in Clackamas County from a high level. And then we have MOU agreements for 2 corridors, 82nd and McLaughlin, that will be implemented by multiple jurisdictions. So ODOT and TriMet mostly partnering with us on those. And those were attached in your materials. And that is all we have today. I just want to bring these forward, give you an update of where we are, and then offer opportunity for discussion or questions. And as Mike said, we'll be back in front of you again for more formal direction, but wanted to provide this opportunity for questions.
So we have Ken first and then Paul.
So we have 5 projects that are being considered for funding. But I heard a statement early on in the presentation that raised a red flag for me. And that was, you were talking about taking the, what do you call it, the Southwest corridor?
That's the light rail.
The light rail corridor. And they said, we get 24% of what's left over. I'm a little concerned with that wording, frankly, knowing how often these kinds of projects can go over budget. If we're getting 24% of what's left over, which on the surface, if all the money shows up, doesn't seem to be unreasonable with population and all the rest of it considered. But if that project eats up more money, that means that what's left over might not be the 780 million that has been committed to the 5 projects. So how do we get some reassurance on that?
Well,
I don't think that's what they mean.
Well, it's what they said, and
Yeah.
that makes me nervous.
Let me clarify. The measure is not going to give that project more money than it is currently designated. So they're saying, and I don't remember the exact number, but it's around 900 million. They're saying that's all you get from Get Moving 2020 TriMet. You have to figure out the rest. So
that guarantee, in effect, if it passes, that guarantees us the 780 million for our 5 projects.
Well, the 780 was more than just our 5 projects. Those are investments being made in Clackamas County. It also included 10% of the Southwest corridor costs since it's serving Clackamas County. But yes, that the dollar figures that we're presenting to you are the ones that would be in the measure as currently presented.
So that 780 million, how much is actually committed to the 5 projects?
I'd have to do some math on that and pull that up.
I can speak to that. It's about $975,000 that we're including for the 10% contribution for Southwest Corridor. Other than that.
So call it 680 million, roughly.
Yeah.
I mean, that's roughly $1 million you're talking about. So that takes it to about 680 million for the 5 projects.
That's close. Yeah.
Yeah. Close, but no cigar, right?
I wouldn't say no cigar.
Yeah, so that's a firm commitment?
Well, nothing's a firm commitment until this gets referred to be on the ballot and we all see what it looks like.
Well, I mean, obviously assuming that it passes.
Yeah.
Yes, the Metro Council has not referred it yet, and so I can't sit here and tell you with 100% certainty what they're going to do. But as it currently stands, and as all our discussions and everything that so far we've been told, and that the task force has recommended, that yes, if it was voted yes, and that's what they refer, that's what we'd get.
I'm just cautious about wiggle room in dealing with Metro. I want to make sure that the commitments that are being made are pretty firm. I suspect that Commissioner Savas will have more to say on that subject, quite frankly. But even though transportation is not my big issue personally, I want to be darn sure that those are the projects that get done and that we do get, in fact, our fair share of the money.
And Commissioner Humberson, sorry, go ahead.
I'll stop there.
So Commissioner Humberson, just so you know, part of what we want to bring back to you in 2 weeks is basically a resolution, which is going to include all of the things that are our understanding, all the things you just mentioned, the dollar figures, the scopes, and we're going to bring that to you. So when you approve, if you choose to, these letters and these MOUs, you're going to do it all as one package so that you can say, this is what we approved, so that there would be no misunderstandings later.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Paul,
Yeah, well, I think Commissioner Humberson's math, I actually got more questions than I had before he started getting the responses to his questions. So I heard 10% of 780 million is the Southwest Corridor.
No, it's 10% of about 900 million.
Okay, so that's 90 million. That's $90 million.
Yeah, roughly.
Okay, so 10% of 90. So where does that show up?
you
Well,
take
all
it
we're
away
doing
from
is
that.
saying, with the percentages of what would be coming to Clackamas County, we're simply saying, if 10% of that Southwest corridor is attributed to Clackamas County, and am I not answering your question?
Well, so let's just put that on pause for a minute. I'll go back to my original thought and questions that I had. So during this process, we were told that there were about 4 or 5 projects that would be off the top, meaning that if the package is how much money, Jamie? The total package is it 4 billion, 6 billion, 3 billion?
It's up being around 7 with leveraged funds.
Okay,
So
so
to be
7 billion.
To
Yeah,
be clear, though, it's 3. The math we currently have was about, for the corridors, is about 3.8 billion from the measure
okay, 3.8 billion from the measure.
for the corridors. Yes.
Okay, and there were a few projects that came off the top that weren't incorporated into the division of shares between Portland and
Correct.
Paloma and Washington and Clackamas. So as I recall, 2 of them, one was Southwest, right? Southwest Corridor.
Yep.
And the Burnside Bridge,
Mhm.
right? And what were the other off the top measures or projects?
So I will tell you and then give you a little more info. The Port of Portland project, at Airport Way and 82nd, and then the Max Tunnel planning money. But those are not included in the math I gave you. We are not considered, the math I gave you, the percentages, the 20.5% or so and the 24.4%, I am not including those in there. I'm saying those go to those other jurisdictions completely. And that's why I said, depending on whose math you listen to, our percentage you might hear as high as 29% if you take all those regional projects and take them off the top. But we're not presenting that to you.
Yeah, well, I mean, in order for me to straight face my citizens, they're going to ask me, how much is it? It's 3.8 billion. How much of that do we get?
And if we assume 10% out of the Southwest corridor, which is the projected ridership out of Clackamas County, it's about 20.5%.
Well, I mean, I appreciate that. That's brand new to me. I have not heard that until today, honestly. All along, I think it was anticipated that there be little to no ridership on the Southwest corridor unless people actually drove out to the Southwest corridor to get there.
Mm-hmm.
There's not anything that's really in walking distance of Clackamas County. So how do we get 10% ridership? That's new. I'm sorry for asking the question. I hadn't heard that before.
It's a valid question, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you I promise you it's correct. We asked the project team, it's, from your projections, what did you, and it was mostly coming from the Lake Oswego area and potential Wilsonville, but it was that was their estimate. And so that's what we used. If we, just so you know, if we use 0, and maybe this would help, if we just say 0% of the Southwest corridor, then the percent in Clackamas County is almost 19%.
Okay, so that means that you're subtracting, our share of the 3.8 billion with nothing off the top, okay, is 18%.
It's it's closer to 19, between 18 and 19%, but that's also if you consider no benefit to the county from the Southwest corridor.
Okay.
So I guess at its
Well-
fundamental core, Mike, we're trying to educate the dialogue around the fact that we're trying to capture every benefit to Clackamas County, and our numbers are more conservative than other numbers our commissioners may hear in regional discussions. Is that a correct statement?
That is a correct statement. Like Commissioner Savas mentioned, there's lots of other projects that were used in the math, and we have not included those because we have a harder time saying that those are regional and giving Clackamas County a direct benefit, whereas the Southwest corridor will. It's just hard to quantify exactly what it'll be.
Yeah, okay, so appreciate that. That answers that question. An area that I have a little bit of concern about, you've heard this before, and I think now it's at the political level where everyone's got their eyes on impacts to communities of color, low income areas. So with that, I have had for years concerns about displacement, and have attended a number of sessions and programs, some of them which were held by the African American community in Portland, who did some excellent work, very brilliant people with some very stunning statistics. You know, what was once redlining translated into impacts of urban renewal, and now has translated into transportation-oriented developments and land use and transportation policies that continue to basically, essentially, I'm not saying with deliberateness, but in effect, continue to push people out of the communities that they grew up in. And I have been focused as hard as I could for a long time, because we were told through a number of other, again, some of these seminars we go to and so forth, that they were to do something different on Southwest Corridor. So I attended that. I've been asking all along, and I think other staff in the county know that I've been asking for, what does Metro have for the anti-displacement policies? I still have not seen anything that I or maybe others, and I plan on actually raising this as the discussions talk about racism. I actually plan on talking about this in greater detail to see what's there, because I want to see what the program is. I haven't seen anything really, and I'm asking for it. And I do know that it's nice for people to talk about affordable housing and putting in a bit of affordable housing here and a little bit of affordable housing there. And I consider that really tokenship to some degree, because it's marginal at best. It doesn't really meet the impacts. It's essentially it's very little for the problem it causes. And no better example, I think, than other areas around the region that have experienced that. And so I want to see that, because that's spelled out in what I saw in the memorandum for McLaughlin Boulevard. And really it affects everywhere we go. So, you know, the housing, whether it's a lack of housing that is caused in Tigard because of the Southwest Corridor, or it's caused elsewhere because of another project, whatever they may be, that collateral effect of how that affects the marketplace is important. And I think that, you know, we have to, and I said this on Friday, some of my colleagues heard this in a conference, in a two-hour call with a group of folks, that, you know, with home ownership comes dignity, with home ownership comes prosperity, with home ownership comes success. And when I look at some of the projects, if you just got to go back in the rearview mirror and just think back at some of the recent projects that have been done in the region that resemble, you know, have combinations of either urban renewal and or transportation-oriented development or light rail or whatever it may be, a lot of people have been displaced, and the amount of properties or homes available for sale declines dramatically, because there is no places for people to buy. There's only places for people to rent, and that's not a road to prosperity. So I'll cut it short there, but that's just one concern I have, that as we go forward and we talk about our land use policies and transportation policies and all the different ways where people of color and low-income communities are impacted. This is one of them that I have seen the effects. We have seen them. It's documented. I'm not saying it's deliberate, but the impacts are real, and we need to create more opportunities for home ownership that's affordable. Not that it's expensive, that's affordable. And that's why the Sunrise Corridor is such a big deal for me, because it's the only project that opens up opportunities for housing without displacing anyone and without redevelopment. And with redevelopment comes expense, higher value property, less properties for sale. Sorry for my long-winded response and concern. That's just a piece of it. I'll let someone else talk.
So Martha,
Oh, may I quickly respond, Chair?
sure.
I just wanted to offer that Metro will be coming to our EDC committee. I believe it's on June 24th. They'll be presenting on Get Moving 2020 with specific details around that program, because it's very important to the McLaughlin corridor as well. So just hope that you would be there. Commissioner Savas and Tyler will be there to answer questions. It'll be a great opportunity to get more information. Thank you.
All right, so Martha,
So I have two questions. So the Southwest Corridor is not directly in Clackamas County, is that correct?
Correct. The terminus is Bridgeport Village.
Village. So that would make sense. It would largely be Wilsonville and Lake Oswego, but it is not a Clackamas County footprint. I just wanted to make sure I understood that. The McLaughlin corridor has been fomenting rebellion for even before I got here in 2003. So, and we have Map It. Paul, you know more about this than I do, but a lot of people involved there in planning is who's going to drive that car? Because there is continued great suspicion of Metro. I'm just being pragmatic here in that area. And my understanding is the people I talk to and that Paul talks to and we all talk to seem very concerned that it's going to impact the livability of the communities, you know, that are adjacent to the McLaughlin corridor. How is that planning going to happen? Who's going to be in charge of that? You know, that area, I tried to actually work on this back in 2003, and I was told by Bill Kennemer and Larry Soa not to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So I'm kind of glad now, after all these years, we're looking at something, but is it our staff that's going to run that? Is it Metro staff? Can you give me any insight to that? Yeah.
I'd be happy to speak to that a little bit. I think there are unanswered questions about the details of exactly how it will play out, but we do think that Metro will take the lead on that planning work and that there will be a lot of engagement from our staff at the county and also from the neighborhood groups. And to go back to one of Commissioner Savas's comments about the anti-displacement piece or community stabilization, this will all play into that as well. There will be an oversight committee that will be convened by Metro to process any big changes to proposals within the corridors. So there'll be a conversation convened at that level. But within the anti-displacement conversation, they're going to be looking for individual corridor input. So those community members that are already organized, that have been thinking about these things for all these years, they're going to be engaged in a formal process and be able to give feedback and to advise on what's appropriate for the corridor. So we're looking at kind of a multi-level approach, and all of it, of course, will be convened with our staff working very closely with Metro's staff on those things. More details to come.
Okay, thank you for that, because hope springs eternal, but we haven't had a significant amount of luck there, okay? And like I said, just be aware the anti-Metro sentiment there in terms of who's driving the car is going to be pretty.
One thing I'll just add is the implementation of the projects that are slated for it will be done by ODOT and by TriMet. So the actual projects that are slated, but the corridor planning work, Metro will take the lead.
Well, they're no big fans of TriMet either, at least, I don't think. I don't know what Paul thinks, but.
Build a wall.
Well, I don't want to build a wall. I just want to be sure that we know what we're getting into. I mean, I obviously would like to see something happen after all these years, but it's been attempted numerous times. So maybe I can't say the third time is the charm, but maybe the 10th, 11th, and 12th time is the charm. So bless you all for attempting this, but it would be nice to finally see something happen, but it's got to be community driven. So there you go.
So I have my hand raised, so I could say something. You know, there's a lot to be finished up on this. I think one of the most important things is the parking structure. There's
Yeah.
lots of opportunities on McLaughlin Boulevard that could be done, including the Bomber, and a number of places that could be redeveloped and provide lots of retail opportunity, housing opportunity. There's just a ton of opportunity, and the community will have input on how to do that. The subject today is about moving forward, not about, digging into the project. That comes next, the MOU discussion. And
Okay.
we have a lot of work to do today. So I look forward to those discussions, and I'll see how people feel about passing the measure during this very challenging time, that's for sure. So Ken, your hand's up.
Yes, I'll be brief. I think in the vein of community involvement, and particularly with MAPIT and the groups that have been working on some of these very specific areas with their own specific planning, that not just having Metro come to a public meeting and get input at a public meeting that's a one-time or a two-time thing, but actually a representative of MAPIT on a working group and in some of these other communities that are going to be impacted by this work, so that it's not just a public meeting where people do their one or two time put your little red circle on the wall type thing, but an actual representative out of that community on the working group. I think that without that part of it, Martha's concerns go sky high, quite frankly. So just keep that in mind as you move forward with this.
Okay.
All right. So, okay, thanks. So when are you coming back?
We'll be back on June 30th for another policy session, preparing likely a resolution for adoption at a later meeting.
All right.
Can I clarify one
Paul,
thing?
please. What?
Can I just clarify one thing? So you have, there are no additional comments that you have on the MOU or the letter of intent between now, or if you do, please feel free to contact us and we'll have discussions with you and a broader dialogue with the board.
Okay, Paul, please be brief.
Sure. How much time do we have? Was this an hour session or a half-hour session?
No, we're done.
30-minute session.
Okay, so I just want to say, Dan, to your question, you put the question out there, I'm going to answer. I met with Jamie just about a half an hour, 45 minutes ago, and as you've all laid out, there's some things that were not included in the packet, so it's hard to comment because so much is missing. So I'm just going to get that up front. I want to make that perfectly clear. I've kind of spelled those out to Jamie earlier. But there's a lot. I have a lot of questions, and there's only half an hour, and the time's up. So I heard that. I'm going to respect that. I'm going to honor that. But I have a lot more to go. But perfect. I thought I'd give benefit of the doubt to wait for all the material to come. And please send me the PowerPoint for today. It wasn't in the packet today. I printed everything off in the packet, and the PowerPoint was not part of it. So you send that to me. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Next is what, Gary?
Next, so we'll do a switch of staff here. Next is the Housing Authority of Clackamas County fiscal year 2020-2021 budget. I'll remind you, commissioners, you are now sitting as the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. Housing Commissioner Leenstra will be brought into the room here as well to join you. So as soon as everyone's in, we'll have staff present, and I believe Jill Smith, the Executive Director, will take the lead. So let's just wait a moment, please.
Looks like Ann's in Hawaii or something.
Jill is not in the room, so maybe Rich is taking the
So Rich,
lead.
I'll let you start then, please. Rich Swift.
Could you actually, I think Jason was trying to come in. Could you invite
He's
Jason?
there.
Oh, is he in? He is there.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, missed you.
Oh.
And then Ann is here too. So afternoon to everyone. Actually, Jill contacted me late yesterday, let me know that she had a family situation come up and she wasn't going to be with us today. And so she asked me to pinch hit today's presentation. And so here I am doing exactly as I was asked to do. So what we're doing in this policy session is reviewing the Housing Authority Board with you convene as the Housing Authority Board. And this will then go forward pending your questions, pending any changes that you're recommending to the business meeting for Thursday for your approval as the Housing Authority Board for, budget for FY21. And so what I will do at this point is walk through the budget with a presentation. And so what I want to do is just kind of quickly go over the different components of the Housing Authority and then walk through a presentation. The question I have, since I'm pitch hitting this, is Jason, do you have that presentation, or who has that related to doing the getting it up on the screen for everyone?
Yeah, I should be able to share that.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Try that here.
Okay. Okay, so why don't you just hold it right there, and then so let me walk through some of the highlights of this overall. So the Housing Authority, I'm working across two laptops here, forgive me. So the Housing Authority consists of 44 overall FTE with some interns. The total request in terms of the budget is $27,044,088. General fund support for the Housing Authority is $240,000 and $240,960. What we have in terms of what makes up the overall components of the Housing Authority, the public housing, the request there in terms of the budget is $3.5 million. Housing vouchers at 17.2, and that by far is the largest component of our budget. Development at 1.9, grants at 2.3, central office at 1.2, and then local projects at $583,000. So what I want to do now, because I know that we're a little backed up on time, is get this flipped around. So sources of funding for the Housing Authority, you have some management fees, which are a total of 1%, county contribution at 1%, grants 8%, other funding sources at 1%, development at 9%, dwelling rents at 7%, public housing operating subsidy 8%, housing assistance, that's an admin fee at 5%. And then the remainder of the budget is the housing assistance program, and that's 60%. In terms of expenses, local projects 2%, our administration at 5%. So administration is actually pretty low in terms of the overall cost to the Housing Authority at 5%. Development 7%, grants 9%, public housing 13%, and again the housing assistance program at 64%. So then. What I want to do now is move into the presentation. So there, I think, is a pretty good visual representation of the folks who make up the Housing Authority in terms of assistance from the Housing Authority. So the first tile there, please, Jason. The second, I guess. Okay. The Housing Authority of Clackamas County, a municipal corporation established under Oregon Revised Statute, Chapter 456. Provides low-cost housing to individuals meeting the criteria established by HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. I don't know if all of you recall that the Housing Authority, I think it was last year, had its 80th birthday. I believe it is the oldest housing authority in the state.
Yes.
So as provided by statute, the Clackamas County Housing Board of County Commissioners plus 2 additional members, and we are working on that additional member now. 1 resident or participant and 1 a resident of the county make up the governing body of the Housing Authority. And HUD provides operating and rental subsidies and administrative fees for the operation of the housing authority. So next tile. Thanks. So as I said, the housing authority is in a component unit due to its shared board. And so an IGA outlines those county services that the housing authority consumes from the county. That is made up by county council, our technology services, HR, human resources, payroll, courier, mailroom, and then records management. And then we don't have to, belabor this one because I already went over this tile, so we can move on. But that's our percentages. And then here, what I'll do is, since Jason has so much to do, with the preparation of these materials, and also, knows this forwards and backwards, and also just to honor the fact that he has done a fair amount of this work, I'll let you jump in on this tile and walk us through it, Jason.
Okay, thanks, Rich. This is just a representation of the different lines of business that the housing authority has, and also, as we did last year, wanting to call out the federal funds that are specifically restricted. So if you look at the column for public housing, rents, the federal funds we receive, the grant dollars we receive that are related specifically to public housing, those dollars can only be used for public housing. Very similar to Housing Choice Voucher, the voucher program, which is our largest program. The $17 million is the federal funds we use for housing assistance payments, as well as admin fees. We have some other specific grants for something like the FSS program that pays for an employee to help our customers with those to better their futures. Development grants and central office are all more or less outside of the federal side, except for the grant related to capital fund, which is probably our largest grant that we received that's specifically related to public housing. And then our local projects are the smaller projects where we receive dwelling rent for individual units that the housing authority manages. So these are performance measures. You want to take those, Rich, or would you like me to?
No, go ahead. You keep going. You're doing well.
Okay. All right, excellent. So this is just going through our performance measures that the housing authority looks at. This one is measuring the affordable housing units, either preserved or in development. In pre-development, we have Webster Road. I know you've had a lot of discussions with Stephen on those. That's 48 units that are moving forward. Under construction, we have Hillside Manor, which is the RAD development, where it's public housing, our largest tower there, being redeveloped currently. Just closed on that. We're about a month into that deal. That'll be 100 units that'll be completely remodeled and brought into a tax credit property. And then completed units, we have Clayton Moore, which is fully occupied with 24 units, and then Rosewood Terrace with 212 units that's moving forward as well. Public housing properties, our goal is to maintain 98% occupancy, and we'll be able to maintain that over all the quarters for this year so far. Section 8 vouchers. So looking at this quarterly, we want to make sure that at least 90% of our Section 8 voucher recipients can find housing. And when we issue a voucher and it goes out on the street, we want to do everything we can to make sure that person can lease up. And we've, in the third quarter, we've been able to achieve that goal. So the Housing Authority and COVID. So HUD has provided us approximately $580,000 through both public housing operating subsidy and voucher administrative fees. And those funds are specifically earmarked to be used to respond to COVID, whether that be for us to purchase protective equipment, cleaning supplies, additional technologies to allow us to work remotely, or to be able to have documents signed remotely by clients, additional security, and everything related to COVID. They're pretty broad as far as what we can use those dollars for. We also expect, we haven't received it yet, but HUD's been saying that they're going to provide additional funding to cover rents and operating subsidies. So what happens is, a lot of people out of work, their portion of the rent goes down. That means the Housing Choice Voucher program has to cover that difference. So HUD is working to provide additional funds for that. HUD's also provided a lot more flexibility. Instead of having to go out and request waivers from HUD for specific items, They have a laundry list of items that are pre-waiver or predetermined waivers that we can use, and that just allows more flexibility in the spending of the dollars. And then in ongoing operations, most of us are working remotely. We have maintenance specialists that go out into the field to work on our public housing projects. They really only enter a unit on an emergency basis or work outside of those units. We've also had monthly food distribution programs at our public housing properties. And then resident services has been checking on residents, to see what kind of assistance they need in their day-to-day life. Major accomplishments: we received 70 new mainstream vouchers. 46 of those are housed and will remain housed for the 12 months. We received another group of vouchers, 17 foster youth and independent vouchers. Those are very new. We've only had 4 of those housed. We also entered into a partnership with it's called the Metro 300 grant. It's a partnership with Kaiser and HealthShare, and that is dollars to provide 80 vouchers to individuals with a lot more flexibility and less restrictions than the HUD vouchers that we have. So that's an exciting new development that Tony Carter and her group are working on. And we also served over 100 families with our security deposit loan program, which helps them get into an apartment by providing that initial security deposit. In development, we've had the OHC awarded permanent supportive housing funds for the Webster Road project. We closed on the construction finance for Hillside Manor. And also we're in the process, hopefully by the end of next week, of acquiring the Clayton Moore Commons from Northwest Housing Alternative. And in public housing, we've implemented a homeless preference, which is housed 6 families provided by social services. And we are able to maintain our HUD designation as a high performing agency. We really grew our staff on the resident services side from a team of 1 to 7. Peer support services, case managers. We're working with AmeriCorps that have one of their individuals assist us with that, which is really connected to residents. Especially during COVID, we were able to make a lot more contacts due to the additional staffing. So we contacted 524 vulnerable residents and also delivered 322 boxes of food. Some of the challenges we have: full utilization of our VASH vouchers. We have 22 VASH vouchers that are not utilized, and those vouchers are referred from the VA. So that was one of our challenges, is making sure that their case management is referring folks over to us so we can use those vouchers. And because we're not fully utilized, we've missed a couple of opportunities to go out for additional VASH vouchers because we're not fully utilizing the VASH vouchers that have been awarded. And then for COVID-19, providing resident services at Hillside Manor, respite services. So the building is under construction. There's a lot of noise and such, but with the social distancing requirements, that's one of the challenges we have, is finding a place for residents to go to get away from the construction, but we can't all have them be in the community center. So that working through those challenges, how to get people out of the building, but still maintain the distance.
All right. So Jason, I appreciate that. Thank you. So a few more things I do want to add to this. And actually, this is sort of an update as it relates to the Housing Authority budget in terms of challenges. Jason highlighted the issue with our VASH vouchers and our dependency on the VA Medical Center and what it means for us related to current underutilization and our desire to increase the amount of VASH vouchers, but that critical dependency makes that difficult. But we are working with the VA to see what we can do about that. In addition, it was announced last week, and then it opened yesterday, which was our waiting list. And so we have numbers as of close of business yesterday related to in one day how many applications we received. We received 6,323 applications for the waiting list. The way that split, Section 8 was, and we can certainly send these numbers on to the board, we will do so. Section 8 was 2,231. This one was sort of astounding to me. Clayton Moore, we received, and remember this is, I believe, 22 units of housing. Clayton Moore, we received 1,025 applications. Rosewood Station, which is only 212 units, received 1,321 applications. And then overall for public housing, we received 1,746. So this is one day, and it was yesterday. So the challenges related to housing in the county are extreme. Also related to this, and this is not reflected in the in this budget presentation, is with the Here Together dollars, 26,210. We will have significant planning needs, and so part of our budget presentation does not include that. And so at some point we will be coming back to the board. It'll be later this year to discuss how we are going to be planning for and paying for the service portfolio that we will need to bring up and stand up for 26,210. I'm looking forward to that. I mean, the fact that we have those dollars available is intensely exciting. It's just, there's a little bit of work in front of us related to standing that up. So what I can do is I'll stop talking at this point and open up for questions regarding the Housing Authority budget for FY21.
All right, Ken's up and then Paul. Ken, your mic.
Sorry. Two questions. In reading your presentation, you have 1,100 units under management. And then you go down a little bit further and it says low rent public housing is 445 units. Are those 445 units part of the 1,100 or on top of the 1,100?
They're part of the 1,100.
I thought so, but I wanted to be sure. The other question I had come out of your presentation was, is it possible to work a deal with the veterans for us to find our own veterans rather than having to go through the VA and use VASH vouchers?
Yeah, we've asked that question, and at this point, the VA has been unwilling to turn that over. So that requires a little bit more work for us with the VA to see if they'd be willing to do that. They did actually allow for waivers, like for medical care, where people were going to be unable to use the VA. They could use a different medical entity. And so we do have, I believe, some vets that are actually now using the health centers, the Clackamas County Health Centers, for their care. But we have not been successful at this point in getting the VA to allow us to do that. We would be able to do that. And they
Seems
just
like that would save them some work.
Yeah, you would think so. And,
well, I mean, they could set the standards so that we understand what their standards are, comply with the standards.
We abide, Commissioner Robertson, we abide by those standards as it relates to our CVSO work, our certified, our Clackamas County Vet Services officers. They meet all those standards in terms of the work related to what they do currently. And so we just have not had that yes from the VA.
Okay. Might be worth doing again.
Oh yeah, we will definitely keep pinging away at them, and eventually maybe they'll hopefully maybe realize their resistance is futile and give us a yes.
I love that.
All right, we got 6 minutes, Paul, and then Sonia.
Yeah, I just want to build on that. Those are impressive numbers, Rich, as far as how many people applied within that limited amount of time. I'd love to see those numbers and get more information about that. I think it definitely speaks to the fact that, there is a severe need out there for housing and housing that's affordable. And then there's also affordable housing. And I deliberately said it in those terms because they're three different things. Housing that's affordable, housing affordability, and affordable housing, because affordable housing falls under your shop, what you all do. And I don't think everyone understands that, but all to say is the market's out there. And I think that when we look at areas that are not complicated, areas that are being looked at for redevelopment, you just take areas that are by design in the urban growth boundary along the Sunrise Corridor, in the Happy Valley, wherever along that corridor, there's land there that's underutilized that people are not, for the most part, living on. It's sitting there fallow, waiting for this or that. There is infrastructure out there. Granted, we need road and highway infrastructure to make some of that happen, but if we could just set aside property for private development, property for our development, property for housing, all in the name of housing, and let that stuff being built. That's the only way we're going to satisfy numbers like that. If that's just one day, the need out there is huge. And I know the housing bond that passed doesn't come even close to that number. And we just got to recognize that, I know that some people get into, whether it's Section 8 or whether it's public housing, for a short period of time with aspirations to move on and be prosperous, and they do. They transition from one to another and they land in a place. But if there's not a place to land to, if there's not affordable housing to buy, or there's not affordable housing to rent that's cheaper than what's out there, or that's affordable within their income bracket, it's just a sad state of affairs. And I think it's going to keep our housing authority forever busy and not being able to meet the needs.
Mhm.
The needs aren't shrinking, they're just growing, and we got to recognize that. So that's all I have for today.
Sonia.
Yeah, I just was curious on, I don't see a page number on the slide, but it talks about the accomplishments, and we have development accomplishments and then public housing accomplishments. And I was just curious if you could just give a little bit more information about what implemented a new homeless preference and housed 6 families coming directly out of homelessness. If that was the rapid rehousing, I was thinking that was through Brenda Durbin's shop, but I'm just curious what that program is so I can put it in my box of all of the continuum of services we provide.
Okay. Jason, you want to speak to that before I add to it?
Sure. I believe so. Being the finance guy, I get a little bit of this, but basically what that is there's preferences that allow people to move up the waiting list based on their need and depending what that preference is. And so those preferences were specifically to bring people out of homelessness and get them housed as soon as possible. And so that's what that preference does, is just move them up the list and get them into housing sooner.
Okay, do you know what is like domestic violence, one of those criteria, or is it based on?
I'm not sure of the specific criteria, but we can get you that information.
Yeah, that'd be great. I appreciate it very much.
All right, with that, looks like it's time's up. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. And we'll see you Thursday.
Okay, so I've taken at this point that through this policy session, you're accepting our recommendation just to move the budget as is forward to the Thursday business meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Thursday is a consent agenda, so you will not have a chance to discuss it other than right now. So it sounds like you're all good to go forward with that.
All right, beautiful.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jason. All right. Bye.
All right, so as we're transitioning staff again, you are now sitting again as the Board of County Commissioners. The next session is Clackamas County Extension Education Center Building Project. Next steps going forward. We have the team from the Oregon State University Extension and 4-H Service District, as well as other county staff. So I'll let Mike Bondi take the lead and introduce your team.
Hey there, how are you?
We're still transitioning the team.
I'm well, sorry, I had to pinch hit for Jill and the Housing Authority.
Rich, you're on. We can hear you, Rich. We can hear you.
I'm sorry, I thought I was off. My bad. Bye.
That's great.
All right, so
Hey,
we're still transitioning the team in here. Is this just a few more, Brenda?
yeah, there should be a few more folks I was expecting to join us. Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi.
Hey,
So Mike, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce who is here, and if you begin, please.
Good, yes, I will do that. Thank you. Yeah, I've got several guests with me today. I see Angela Sandino, our Regional Director for OSU Extension for the 3 metro counties. Jeff Jorgensen from Facilities Management, of course, you know Jeff. Dick Caldwell, and Dick doesn't have his video on, but Dick There he is. There he is. Dick is the chair of the Extension Advisory Council, has been for the last couple of years. Been involved in the Extension Education Center building project over the last several years. And there might be one or two others. Leah Sundquist, county liaison here in Clackamas County for Extension. She was going to join us. And then Chris Story might be able to pop in as well.
Mike, neither of those are, neither Leah nor Chris Story are in the
Okay.
waiting room.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for the time, of course, this afternoon. This is kind of a follow-up session from our conversation we had back in May, third week May, where I shared with the board at that time the decision we made in the early part of the month to halt progress on the Extension Education Center building project at that time. And if you remember that conversation, it was kind of sharing with you, and I put some of this in the executive summary as well, that you've got a copy of the process that we'd been through, the bidding, the look at financing and bonds and some of the issues with financing that we faced. And then obviously uncertainty of kind of where things were at, especially in April and May, led us to believe that now is not the time to proceed. So with that, we decided, that was a very brief meeting. I think we only had about 10 minutes that Gary was able to put on the schedule with you folks. So we agreed to come back together sometime before the end of June and touch base on this and try to think about what the path forward might look like. And that path forward includes a couple of things that I wanted to at least broker the initial discussion on, but also, as I think I shared with you back in May, this is the end of my career in Extension. I am retiring the end of this month, and so this is kind of the formal handoff as well, if you will, to those who will follow and have an interest in hopefully working with you in the county to see about the potential for continuing the development of an Extension Education Center or building or whatever will come next. So with that in mind, Angela obviously is our regional director, will be the one with primary responsibility for helping craft what goes forward. And so this is an opportunity to hand that off to Angela. But also with Jeff and with Dick in the room in particular, because they've been involved intimately in this project. Jeff, obviously, from not just the facilities management side, but also on our advisory council, has been for a number of years, and Dick as well. And if you go to page 2 of the document that I prepared for the policy session, kind of lays out, at least in my mind, what some of the key questions are that I thought might just be good to have a little conversation on, or get your thinking about at this time. Where we go from here, the next steps, and you know, the ongoing need, what I perceive at least as an ongoing need for a more adequate extension education facility into the future. I don't know that that'll go away, although obviously there's been plenty of discussion about what the new normal will look like and how we will work in the future, and who's gonna really work out of an office or out of their home. But nonetheless, Extension will continue to have need for a public presence and a place where the community can come to access our educational services and programs. So, you know, one of the questions I think is, in particular, how long do you foresee the ability for Extension to remain at our current location at 200 Warner Milne Drive, or Warner Milne Road? We've been there for 35 years. I think when Extension was moved into that building. I don't know that there was a vision that it would be there for even 35 years, but what does that look like to you going forward? Obviously, what we were originally hoping to do was get a new building built and vacate the existing and aid with the development of what would come next on red soils, and particular with the new courthouse. So, that's a question. What that timeline might look like if there was going to be changes there. That might assist in planning and thinking for the group that's going to be going forward. And then, are you still interested in and working with Extension to provide a location for either a new building on campus, or if there's going to be something that becomes available or some other opportunity on campus, what that might look like? That might be something to talk about. Just put in the document for history, if nothing else, that Extension facility on campus was never part of the original Red Soils master plan. What does that look like in your vision kind of going forward? And then also, I suppose, is the parcel at the southeast corner of Warner Milne and Beaver Creek still in your mind a place where Extension should be thinking to the future? Obviously, the building we had planned maybe was too grand of a design when we ultimately look at costs, but also what this future might look like. Maybe there's an opportunity to retool. Maybe there's an opportunity to rethink that space. Maybe there's an opportunity to bring in other partners, etc. Those are all, I think, parts of kind of a discussion that could go forward. And then also, what do you see potentially as our commissioners as other priorities or opportunities for Extension in this whole process of going forward? So I think that's how I'd like to open it up, and I wasn't expecting any decisions as a result of today's meeting. It was informational. It was a chance to make the kind of the formal handoff for me, and then get your sense of where we should be going. And I'll throw that open now to you all.
I'm going to start off by responding. Ken has his hand up, but I was going to raise my hand, decided I'd wait. But anyway, one thing is the master plan. We don't really, we're kind of up in the air too on the courthouse. However, your facility, now I won't be here after the first year either. I've been interested in childcare on campus for a long time, and that's the building that would work best for childcare. I don't know if that'll happen in the future, but I think it's something of interest. And what you're telling us is so up in the air, you could probably say yes to anything and it might work. Originally, the Clackamas Women's Services or Family Justice Center, it needs more room. And we reserved that spot for you, but it might be true that that's going to be the spot for them. But like you said, the future is uncertain for a lot of things. But that site, we did give the other end to, at least I believe we did, said that will be for the Family Justice Center, Clackamas Women's Services, or Family Services kind of piece of land. So we're going to miss you. You've done a great job. You're still going to be down at the center for a while, though, right?
Yeah. I'll be starting on July, early July down there. Half-time, working half-time in retirement, responsible for leadership continuing down at North Carolina.
Okay. Somebody's phone is ringing. So we had Ken, Martha, and then Paul. Yeah.
So I've always liked the plan that you had for the building and the location. I don't think we need to make a big decision right now, but I think there may be some opportunities going forward. You've done a great job in saving over $6 million to prepare to build that building. That seems to me to be an opportunity to show matching funds for the potential of a grant that we might be able to get out of the agricultural department, federal level, or possibly other sources, because I think that there will be some funds from the federal government for infrastructure building as we go forward. The economy obviously has taken a hit. They're going to want to re-stimulate that economy, which I think they should. And that could be a real opportunity. And you'd be in a very good position to be able to say, we need $1 million. We've got $6 million to match it. And that could actually move your project forward rather quickly. So I'd almost say, let's kind of just keep it on hold, revisit it every 6 months, see if there's been an opportunity to move forward with a grant application or something of that nature. But I don't think we need to make any rash decisions quickly at this point in time. I've always thought the plan was a great plan, and it shares space with other folks, which is a real plus in your design. So I'd hate to see that go away.
Martha?
Pardon me? Me?
Yeah, you're up.
Okay, I'm not on mute. So this has been on our radar since I was first here, Mike, and started to work with you. So this is a project that really, I think if we didn't have to deal with the pandemic, might have been further ahead. And I just want to remind folks that we are a rural county as well as an urban and suburban and frontier county, and that extension is critical for agricultural production and marketing, distribution, and utilization of agriculture inputs and outputs, conservation, development, and the use of natural resources, proper farm and home management, better family living, community development, youth development, leadership, and for improving public affairs for all-around development. And that in tandem with the North Willamette Valley Experiment Station is kind of our anchor here in Clackamas County for our rural communities and for our agricultural production and for that key element of our economy. So I agree with Ken. I understand we can't move forward immediately, but one of the things I think we ought to do is keep this on our radar. I'm willing to see it through. I'm sorry you're leaving Bondi, Mike Bondi, but Angela, I look forward to working with you. I'm in this for the long haul. One of the things that we had talked about with the Family Justice Center is the fact that one of the things Extension does very well is build community and does nutrition programs and does parenting classes. I mean, there's a whole role of a potential for integration with what we do with the Family Justice Center and what Extension does. And that proximity was what it made it more exciting to me, because I think that it's kind of an innovative idea to take people who have been in domestic violence situations and give them an opportunity to learn nutrition, to learn how to parent. I mean, Extension does all of that. So I'd like to put it on hold, but not permanent hold myself. And hopefully I'll be here for another 4 years. Well, I'm going to be here for at least another 4.5 years. And so I'd be willing to keep working on it with my fellow commissioners. I'm not willing to see this not happen yet. So this is my opinion.
Thank you, Martha.
All right, thank you, Paul.
Yeah, I concur with my colleagues' sentiments. I'm hoping that a little bit different nuance than maybe what Commissioner Humberson suggested. My hope is that when the market turns around, you all can come back to us and say, hey, it looks like it's time, or maybe it's ripe. And but hopefully that doesn't linger on for a long period of time. I'm just thinking that maybe when bids come in will be lower in the future, I expect. And I don't know about interest rates, but hopefully they'll still be they'll still be great. I know that you have done a lot of work there in designing and so forth, and it'd be a hate to see that be lost. I think we need to make sure that that's not a stranded investment. So I'm willing to, I would support just assuming we're going to build it there. Let's hang tough and wait for things to turn around. And ideally they do. We can get back on track and make this project move forward. I'll just be brief there. I do want to ask one question though. I have a rough, I know what you all went through, but did you ever go through, I know that constraints are different now, financial constraints. Was there any not financial, but value engineering that was done to maybe look at cost cutting, make the project go forward?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. We actually looked at that back in the fall, and I'll let Jeff address that here in a moment. But yeah, we started when we looked at the original cost estimates for the building, which was like in October, if I remember right. We did some value engineering then, but we didn't do anything after the actual bids came in at that point. Jeff, you want?
That's correct. After the bids came in, we didn't do anything, but again, we're building this building as super energy efficient, net zero. There are things we could do that, it would take us probably out of net zero, but there's another step that we could do some more value engineering too. We also talked about that it does have some additional space up there, that you kind of reduce some of the space, the footprint of the building even a little bit. But yes, we could do more value engineering. Mike is correct on that.
Yeah, and I don't know how you all go forward as a board. I appreciate everyone that sits on the board and makes the bills get paid and manages the district and all of that. So I appreciate everyone's role in that. But I don't know if there's an opportunity between more attractive bid environment and perhaps any bonding costs that improve, and coupled with any value engineering opportunities to maybe reduce the costs a little bit. It's better to have something that you can build and have rather than just dream about. And maybe there's a compromise in there that when the stars align, we can make this happen.
Agreed.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any other comments, thoughts?
Yes,
yeah.
Mike, I guess my mic was off. Do you want to still build the building? The issue is money, or has your vision changed?
Well, that's a really good question. I guess from my standpoint, I wouldn't say necessarily the vision has changed, but I think now is the time to be asking kind of that question. I mean, we've made the hard decision to put this on hold at this point, and so I think we'd be remiss at some level not to kind of spend a little time kind of looking at where we're going and if this is still kind of the plan forward. And I might turn that over to Angela to get her perspective. And then also Dick, I think, seated at the chair of the advisory council, the community group, to kind of get his sense in that too. But Angela, would you share your thoughts on that at this time?
Sure. I think it is the vision that we have this beautiful building as a community resource. And we had so much support on the Extension Community Advisory Network, years invested to have the building built. And I think it was a really exciting effort that so many people in the community could see using this building for educational resources in the future. So I think there is a desire to go forward with it. The one thing being, I guess the question that has arisen due to COVID-19 and all of us working remotely is, do we need so much office space, or can we reduce that a little bit? Will some people continue more remote working, especially our faculty who don't need to come into the office all the time? And that could be, free up some space for maybe somebody else to cohabitate the building with us, or we could rent out some space. But that would be the one question I think that's been arisen. We do want to have in-person programming. I think all of us have learned through this COVID-19 that in-person is so important for our youth, for our seniors, for the whole community. So we want to have a space where people can come in and interact and be human to human instead of Zoom to Zoom and computer to computer, where that building would be a great opportunity to have wonderful meeting space. But yeah, the overall footprint might be reduced a little bit. We could probably have that discussion. But I think this building is something that would be such an asset for Clackamas County, for the whole community, that we would like to continue forward.
The other thing, is the people are now gardening.
Yes.
They are, for example, I planted 10 new fruit trees. And I raised cattle, and I have gardens and for food. And this is something that's changing too. So there's actually a greater need than there was before. Maybe not for office space, but for classroom space.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And not to mention cooking and baking and canning and all of that we do has become, and then parents as teachers, and they want their kids to have more youth activities. So that's a great point. So yeah, I agree.
Dick, would you share any insights you might have as a community representative on our council?
Well, knowing who sits on the council, and I've been there a number of years, and we went through the whole planning process, and there was lots of input. The ladies in the group, they wanted lots of kitchen space because they're into food preservation. So that was a big goal. And then we've learned about our program of extension into the school system and teaching children that how to prepare meals. And people who don't speak English. We have a Hispanic extension agent who gets out and reaches out like that. And so they were all looking forward to this new building, but nobody was looking forward to or even had a clue about the economy. And I think the stumbling block for us really was the fact that the people he had reached out to for additional monies to cover the gap in the financing, their industries just shut down. Take the timber industry. It just dried up. And so we couldn't get to those folks like we thought we could. Lots of discussion was going forward up to this stage, and then all of a sudden the spigot got turned off. And all the members of the advisory council were very saddened by that event or by what's going on right now. And maybe worst of all, that Mike is leaving before it's completed. That's the biggest, because it's been Mike's dream and our dream to see Mike's completion before he did retire. And he won't take an extension on his employment. So hopefully we can get it done while he's still alive. We'll put it that way. But yeah, the advisory council in general was all for it. Spent a lot of hours putting some input with the architects in the planning. And they're very sad, and they're very hopeful that the commissioners will stay with us, offering the site we have or even another site if that's necessary. But we got to get through this economic thing because it's all based on tax revenue in a sense. We don't know what the future holds from that.
Yeah, something that's really, my wife was working on agritourism before the economy fell apart. This is something that is of great interest in Clackamas County. I mean, a partnership with agritourism, with agriculture, with beef and all those other things, 4-H, there's a ton of opportunities still in Clackamas County. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
No.
I appreciate that. And I think to follow up, Jim, on your question, is the vision still a building or is it a financial issue? And at some level, at the end of the day, it is certainly a financial issue. That ultimately is the reason we had to pull the pin. And Chris is with us now. He was one of the folks, obviously, helping us think about the bond financing. I mean, the reality from the very beginning, well, not from the very beginning, from the very beginning, we thought we were going to save enough in our in our district budget over the years to buy a building, pay for a building outright, and not have any debt service. And that quickly wasn't reality. Building escalating costs did. And so the thought of bond financing with the county was a big part of this. And so, Chris, would you like to say anything about financing?
Yeah, I'm happy to join in. Just an observation, I'm not really doing a West thing for this conversation. I've been helping out county finance and coordinating the issuance of bonds for the county, both refinancing our current debt and potentially issuing debt for other projects. And that's where I got involved with extension. And certainly Mike and I have a long history of working on extension issues together. And it was a hard conversation to have to talk about the challenges of the bond market, fluctuating interest rates, but really it came down to, in some ways, more of the jaws of death conversation that all public governments are having right now, which is that the costs of current services are going up faster than revenues. So we could project out a moment before the bonds were matured where we would start having to cut services. That seemed like not something that we would want to offer to the public.
Yeah, and I think that to me is part of what this vision should look like going forward. It isn't just rethinking maybe at some level about the building or the space and the size of the footprint or facility itself. It's also the reality of the funding that Chris highlights. And so it makes me think about some of these other partners that you all have said, hey, maybe there's something else we ought to think about, whether it's Family Justice Center, whether it's other sectors of agriculture, whatever that may be, federal financing, whatever. I think going forward, we need to pay more and more attention to those other resource opportunities, other partner opportunities, in order to ensure that there's sustainable programs. Because like Chris said, at the end of the day, the last thing any of us want to do is have to sacrifice programs so we can have a great building. And that was never the intent, nor should it be. So, I think this has been all good discussion in council, and I appreciate all the thoughts. And I do want to say I appreciate all the folks involved over the years in this project. There have been many. Like Dick said, the people on the advisory council have been just great. The folks in facilities management have been fantastic. Jeff, we would have never gotten as far as we got, and we're able to get without your support. And so I think going forward, the vision is still there. It has to be there. And we just need to figure out a better way to do it. And I have all the confidence in the world in Angela and Leah and Jeff and Dick and others, and hopefully Chris involved to make sure that that dream becomes a reality. Anything else? Yeah, Jim, you're on mute.
Well, I said I'm new at this. I just want to say thank you very much. I appreciate your vision. Look forward to working with you down at ANRAC, and thanks a lot for your time today. And I'd say we're willing to wait and see what comes of the future before we throw out that piece of property put up for sale.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. I really do. This has been, I think, the kind of conversation I was hoping to have here as we hand it off to Angela and say, okay, Angela, you go forth and make it all happen now. And I look forward to working with you all. You know where I'm at. I'm still in the county. We were hoping to have, Gary and I had talked about trying to have a commission tour of the farm this summer. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but you're always welcome. And hopefully I'll be seeing you on at least somewhat of a regular basis through some of the activities and events around NREC.
We had paid for it ourselves, except we didn't get those cookies during the budget committee meeting. So
Yeah, I'm aware of that. Apologize. Maybe next year.
Well, Paul has his hand up. Let's finish up.
Yeah, I just want to say, Mike, congratulations on your retirement. We'll miss you. I appreciate your dedication and your service to this. And you'll be around, I know, but I just want to just give you another congrats, and say thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Paul. Okay.
Thank you all very
everybody.
much. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Dick. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, everybody. Angela.
All right. Goodbye. Thank
Gary,
you.
Gary, it looks like 3:30.
Your next session is at 3:30. We're trying to get the presenters here shortly. So if you would like to wait for 5 minutes, we can go forward, or you can take a break for 30 minutes. What would you like to do?
I'd take 15.
All right, we'll take a 15-minute break, and then we'll start at 3:15. How's that?
Okay, great. Let's go ahead and get started. It's 16 after. We had 15 minutes. So, ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Gary, it is June 16th, and it's 3:16, and that's what's up.
Yes, the next session is annual review of Clackamas County solid waste collection fees. We have the team from Transportation and Development, Sustainability and Solid Waste Program, Eben and Rick, to present. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. For the record, I'm Eben Polk, Supervisor for the Sustainability and Solid Waste Program. And joining me is Rick Winterhalter, our Senior Analyst, and he's our lead staffer in conducting our annual review of garbage and recycling fees for the unincorporated areas of the county. We're here today to share the results of this year's review and convey the recommendation of the county's Solid Waste Commission that the board increase fees to cover certain known cost increases. For that reason, also joining us today, I believe in the audience, is Beth Vargas Duncan on behalf of the Clackamas County Refuse and Recycling Association. Give you a little bit of context here. Our franchised collectors serve 59,000 residential and business customers, picking up garbage, mixed recycling, yard debris, glass, and large items. And these customers get the opportunity for approximately 8 million pickups every year. And in our current open survey of garbage and recycling customers in the county, so far 718 customers have responded in this year's iteration, and 90% report they view the quality of service to be very good or good, with another 8% as neutral. So each year we review the garbage and recycling fees and compare that with the costs so we can ensure safe, cost-effective, and efficient collection services. We then take that analysis to our Solid Waste Commission to seek their recommendation on how to change rates or increase levels of service. Our Solid Waste Commission met on June 1st. So Rick is going to share about the status of garbage and recycling collection under COVID, just to give you a little update on how things are working right now. And then he's going to get into the results of our annual review, outline the cost increases that we're seeing and the recommendation from the Solid Waste Commission. And I also want to just note that we'll provide you with some additional context as you consider the Solid Waste Commission's recommendation, particularly the possibility of a significant increase in Metro's disposal fees coming in the next 6 months. So with that, Rick, would you like to get under?
Thank you, Eben. Commissioners, good to see you all again. You know, as Eben said, just a quick background. I know you want to move on with things, but you know, the collectors, I think, in all this craziness, that there is a steady, steadfast collection that comes every week, and they haven't missed a beat. And the managers have been reporting that you know, that their drivers and office personnel, although like everybody, you know, their practices have changed, you know, and how they do handle breaks and that sort of thing, but they really sense a high sense of morale and pride in their work that the folks are experiencing during this time, recognizing that they are essential workers. And, you know, you've probably seen on, you know, social media around all the trash cans that have the thank you and the, you know, the appreciations from the customers for these guys continuing to serve. And one of the things that we did early on and have done throughout the region, similar to a lot of utilities, the collectors are not stopping service for those who can't pay their bills. And that's going to come up in some future evaluations, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But kind of wanted to share that with you. And one of the other challenges that COVID presented this year in our review is the inability of us to be able to go and do site visits. So you'll note that, as Commissioner Humberson was referencing back to some of the historical things, you'll note that our composites are kind of falling below our target range. Typically, we talk to you about an 8 to 12% operating margin that we want to be in. You can see where things are kind of below that. We didn't have an opportunity to really do the intense review that we wanted, that due to not being able to do some site visits. And so we're hoping to continue that and see if those will come up into the range or just inform us in the future. But we do have, as Eben mentioned, we do have a practice of, keeping up with those known expenses, two of which always arise, are the labor contracts and disposal increases, which, especially disposal increases, the collectors are price takers in this regard. And so, and those two expenses, labor and disposal, represent about 60% of the total cost of collection. So we really think, and the board has supported over the years, those incremental increases when necessary. They're not always necessary, but in this case, we feel that they are. And then, of course, the new addition in January of the corporate activity tax, the CAT tax. And we're kind of we looked across the income, of all the variety of collectors and how that tax might impact them. And our third-party accountant who helps really spearheads the review felt that about a 0.5% on the revenue was what we should estimate for that. And so, as the report says, it translates about 55 cents on a 32-gallon can across all the fee zones, and about $1.30 on the commercial, $1.30 to $1.50 per yard served in a month for commercial. Both of these are, fall under 2%, as Commissioner Humberson pointed out. So that's kind of the first part of what we're going to ask today a little bit, and then we're looking, as Eben mentioned, we're looking ahead to some future considerations. Prior to COVID, actually, like the week before, Metro was proposing a 10% increase on their fees in order to take care of some capital expenditures. They need to do some changes in operations at the Metro South transfer station with their new operations and those sort of things. So that's what they had proposed. They pulled back from that immediately because they noticed, they're part of their costs and what they put into their budget it's based on forecasting. And of course, there's been some significant changes, obviously, in the commercial sector, on some loss of revenue there, or some loss of tonnages, and so they're seeing about a 10%. The last time we checked in, they had seen about a 10% reduction in tonnage, but they've seen that flatten out, and so they're constantly doing forecasts and looking ahead. But they had proposed at the time that they'd be looking at it probably in the fall, maybe an October increase or a January 1 increase. And we still have no indication when that might be. And so we would, ask that we would come back in the fall, late summer, as we continue the review, get more information, and bring that forward to you then. Now, just to give you a little note of that 10% increase could represent about $1 on that 32-gallon can. So that's kind of where we are right now. So we're looking to bring those forward. The Solid Waste Commission did meet on June 1st, and those are the recommendations that we're bringing forward, that that we do this increase effective July 1st, and then come back to you in the fall with more information on COVID impacts and also see where we are on the range. So that I'll leave it at that.
Today, do you need a motion?
Well, typically, and that's probably another question that I didn't put in the report. Lately, we have had, or in the past several years, Commissioner Bernard, you've taken this forward as on the consent item.
Okay.
So that's obviously at your pleasure.
So, commissioners, we do need a motion, and you've got your options there. There are three. Option 1 is to maintain fees at current levels until next year's annual review. Option 2A is a fee adjustment now based on the existing known and measurable costs. Option B directs staff to bring staff forward for a fee proposal later this year to address any Metro proposed increases. So what the recommendation that the Solid Waste Commission made basically aligns with option 2. Is that right, Rick?
Yeah.
That is correct. Yeah, 2A and 2B.
So option 2 is your recommendation.
Ken?
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve options 2A and 2B.
Is there a second?
Second.
Paul seconded, Sonia seconded it, Martha raised her hand. Am I supposed to?
They're barking again, so.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, I have a question for Rick. Just quickly, Rick, could you refresh my memory? It's been a long time since I think I asked the question, but looking at the rates and the urban rate and the rural rate, regardless of the smaller size residential use containers, but the rural rate is a couple bucks less. And is that because of the more stringent recycling? Because it seems like being in a urban area with more homes close together, it's easier to serve more homes. There's economies of scale. So I can understand why the urban rate would be cheaper, but in this case, it's $2 more.
Yeah, Commissioner Savis, that is largely due to the yard debris, the additional service that you have in the urban area. All your statements, of course, are true. So it's not attributed entirely. Well, that is one of the reasons why that rate is higher. But it's not the entire yard debris portion that is the difference between the two, because you do have longer distances between houses out in the rural area. You may be going up more long drives in the rural area, longer distance from disposal. So, that difference between the two isn't the yard debris only, but so.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Interesting enough, Rick, I almost said, oh, you're a new guy. I didn't recognize you. It's been a while, the white beard and everything.
Yeah, I haven't seen it this color myself.
Anyway, if there's no other, I've got check, no other questions. Brenda, could you poll us, please?
Certainly. Commissioner Savis?
Aye.
Commissioner Humberston?
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader? You're on mute.
Aye.
Chair Bernard?
Aye, motion carries unanimously. And with that, thank you all very much. Do a great job as usual.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Right. Gary, I think that was it for the day, right?
You're on mute, Gary.
That's it till 4:30 p.m. At 4:30 p.m., you have your session with the leaders in equity, diversity, and inclusion. You have talking points in your email. Please see that if you haven't seen it yet. But 4:30 p.m. is your next meeting.
I was a little bit offended by that Oregon State flag, though. I got to tell you that. No, Oregon, not Oregon State. Excuse me.
Oh.
All right, you alone. All right, with that, thanks, and we'll see you at 4:30.